Hello and welcome back to Every Problem. This is Stewart Calculus, 8th edition, section 1.1, problem number 34. In this problem set, they're asking us to find the domain. And here we have g of t equals the square root of 3 minus t minus the square root of 2 plus t. Now with the domain, they're basically asking us what input can we have for this function in order to get an output. So that's pretty much what they mean by the domain. And what we know about square roots is that if it's a square root or some even root, right, the square root or fourth root or sixth root, any even root, we cannot have negative numbers underneath the radical, right? And the radical is this sign here. So no negative numbers here for any even root. Okay? So we have two radicals here. We have 3 minus t, and this is minus 2 plus t. So the first thing that we should do in math if we have a little bit more complicated of a problem is we know we can't have a negative number under this radical. And so in order to find what the domain is, I always think it's good to find what it isn't first. So what would make this negative, at least under the radical, right? This 3 minus t. Well, if t were greater than 3, that would make that number negative. And then secondly, we can ask, what would make this number under this radical negative, this 2 plus t? Well, that would be if t were less than negative 2. And that's because you can see, right, if we take a look at this first one, 3 minus, well, if it's any number bigger than 3, like 4, right, 3 minus 4, that gives us negative 1, and we can't take the square root of negative 1 for a normal domain range problem. In the second problem, or the second half of this function, we have t less than negative 2. Well, 2 plus what? What would give us a negative number? Well, what if we had negative 3, right? 2 plus a negative 3, that would also give us a negative 1. That's just a quick way to check it. So if we look at this and we know that t can't be greater than 3 or less than negative 2, we know that it has to be in between those two numbers. So that means t must be in between negative 2 and positive 3. So how would we write that? Well, what's most important when we write it is we need to check and see if t is allowed to equal negative 2 or positive 3. And it is, because if you have a 0 under the square root, that's okay. That's just going to be equal to 0. So what we'll have is we'll write domain, and we'll write our domain with closed brackets because it is okay to include negative 2, and it's also okay to include positive 3, because again, if t equals negative 2 or positive 3, we'll simply get 0 under one of the radicals, and that's okay because that's just a 0. It's not a negative number. And that's our answer for problem 34.